The name Billy Rautenbach still echoes across Africa, even in the deepest parts. From humble beginnings in Zimbabwe, he built an empire that started with car dealerships and quickly grew to include deals that are still a mystery. If Forbes were to include criminals in its list of billionaires, Billy would be one of the richest men in the world despite his fall from grace in multiple countries. Just when he thought he was too quick to get caught and too smooth to leave traces, his excesses woke up the sleeping dogs of South Africa, who showed him no mercy. As if for years, Rautenbach changed the rules and made things happen the way he wanted them to. Some of the most corrupt governments in Africa are linked to him, and he has been accused of funding violence and putting down opposition. From Zimbabwe's political crisis to the chaos in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, his business activities raise more questions than they answer. Even with all of these accusations against him, he managed to keep his empire together and stay out of jail. But it was far from easy. Billy Rautenbach was born in Zimbabwe in 1959. He came from a modest but legitimate family. His dad owned a transport company that was a small but important part of the country's logistics system. Rautenbach knew a lot about how things worked and was interested in business from a very young age. As he got older, he took over the family business and quickly set out to make it much bigger than it had been before. Few people were as cruel as he was when he turned it into a giant company called Wheels of Africa, which controls the logistics sector in the region. Under Rautenbach's leadership, Wheels of Africa grew very quickly, buying up small businesses and sending competitors out of business. His aggressive plans included more than just buying out competitors. He also used dishonest methods to make sure his company was the leader in its field. He was quick to threaten anyone who got in his way, and he often used his contacts to make things work out in his favor. As Rautenbach rose through the ranks, he became known as a man who broke the rules because of how extreme his actions became. It looked like he could not be beat in the transport business, but that was just a taste of the strategies he would use on much bigger projects. Rautenbach's big break came when he started looking into the rich mining business, where money could be made quickly and with less control. As his power grew, he was able to make deals in countries with weak legal systems and lots of corruption. His company grew quickly because he wanted to be in charge of everything, not just because he was smart about business. He learned to control local authorities by paying bribes and making deals that guaranteed his success, no matter what it cost other people. By the time Rautenbach was in his mid-30s, he was already a powerful person who was not just good at logistics, but the signs that he was a cruel person grew along with his empire. He was ready to undercut anyone, even a small business in the neighborhood or a government worker who was in his way. Regulators who tried to put limits or rules on him were quickly silenced by threats or money. As soon as it became clear that Rautenbach did not follow the rules, he became famous for pushing the limits. He used all the tools he had to stay ahead and knew the system well enough to make it work the way he wanted it to. Rautenbach's rise to power was fueled by an obsession with power, money, and control. His reputation for being cruel went beyond the bad things he did. It also included how well he could get around in the complicated web of politics and corruption. Many people saw him as a businessman, but others saw him as something darker, someone who would do anything to keep his job. He was already leaving a terrible legacy, even though it was just the start of a much worse path. Billy Rautenbach didn't take a long time to switch from transportation to mining. He did it quickly and with a lot of thought. In the 1990s, the Democratic Republic of the Congo was falling apart. President Mobutu's government was falling apart, leaving a dangerous power void. Rautenbach was one of the few foreign businessmen who dared to step in and calm things down. He didn't wait for permission. He saw a chance in the chaos. With the connections and cash in hand, he entered Congo's fragile economy just as Laurent Kabila prepared to take over. Through closed-door meetings and questionable deals, Rautenbach secured rights to mining assets that had been government-controlled for decades. He got a key stake in Gangster, the state-run mining company sitting on some of the world's richest cobalt and copper reserves. These weren't just any minerals, they were critical to global industries, and now Rautenbach had control over them. The licenses were fast-tracked, raising red flags that were ignored by those hungry for foreign investment. He used his usual tactics: build influence fast, cut out competitors, and lock down operations through legal contracts no one could easily challenge. Under his watch, Gécamines became a funnel for wealth, flowing straight to his network. Mining sites in Katanga churned out billions in resources, and Rautenbach grew richer by the day. Locals saw little benefit. The riches were extracted and shipped abroad. Meanwhile, his name became tied to secretive offshore accounts and shell companies used to move money without detection. But his grip didn't last forever. By 2000, things shifted. Laurent Kabila, under pressure from international observers and political rivals, removed Rautenbach from his post and stripped him of control. He was accused of fraud, corruption, and illegally moving profits out of Congo. Rautenbach fled the country before charges could stick, leaving behind a trail of questions, broken contracts, and missing money. His short reign in Congo left a lasting scar. The mining sector he once controlled remained entangled in disputes and investigations. Billions had vanished, and nobody knew exactly where the money had gone. His brief time in power revealed a pattern: get in fast, take everything, and disappear before the backlash hits. Congo was just one chapter, but it showed how far he was willing to go to get what he wanted. And it wouldn't be the last time he'd use chaos as a doorway to power. By 2009, Billy Rautenbach wasn't just a businessman, he was a wanted figure in the eyes of global powers. The European Union placed him under sanctions, citing his direct support for Robert Mugabe's brutal regime in Zimbabwe. Intelligence reports accused him of funding political violence, supplying vehicles and money that helped ZANU-PF crush opposition. It wasn't speculation. Documents and witness accounts tied him to logistics that fueled election interference and state-sponsored crackdowns. Rautenbach provided the muscle behind Mugabe's grip on power. Trucks from his companies moved people and equipment during key political operations. Money flowed from his businesses into accounts linked to regime operatives. While the public saw him as a tycoon, governments saw a financier of oppression. He wasn't just aiding a dictator, he was making money while doing it. Soon, other countries joined the hunt. South Africa launched investigations into his businesses. The UK flagged his assets for review. The DRC reopened old fraud cases. Yet, Rautenbach stayed one step ahead every time. He used citizenship switches, offshore banking, and legal loopholes to shield himself. Despite warrants, travel bans, and asset freezes, he never saw the inside of a prison cell. He knew how to work the system and had enough influence to bend it when needed. While others fell, Rautenbach survived, untouched, hidden in plain sight. The Green Fuel Ethanol Project was announced as a breakthrough for Zimbabwe. It promised clean energy, thousands of jobs, and a path to economic recovery. Backed by Billy Rautenbach, it was sold as a patriotic investment meant to reduce fuel imports and boost local production. Government officials praised the project publicly and pushed it as a national success story. But behind the scenes, it was built on corruption, force, and exploitation. To secure land for the project, rural communities were pushed out. Farmers in Zimbabwe were forced to give up their land with little compensation. Police were used to silence protests, and journalists who questioned the project were threatened or arrested. The land that once fed families now fed profits for Rautenbach and his inner circle. Locals got little more than broken promises and polluted water. The ethanol plant generated money, but it didn't flow back to the people. The wealth moved up into elite pockets through government contracts and inflated deals. Rautenbach's influence made sure policies were rewritten to benefit him. The government even passed laws requiring all fuel in the country to include his ethanol, guaranteeing him massive profits regardless of performance. Dissent was not tolerated. Local leaders who resisted were sidelined, independent audits were blocked. When citizens demanded transparency, the state responded with violence or silence. What was promoted as green and clean was, in truth, a tightly controlled monopoly, rooted in greed and protected by political power. When the Panama Papers leaked, a hidden financial world was exposed, and Billy Rautenbach's name was right in the middle of it. His empire wasn't just built through deals and contracts. It was protected by a maze of offshore shell companies stretching from the British Virgin Islands to Cyprus and the Seychelles. Each company was just a piece of a puzzle designed to confuse, delay, and protect. The goal was clear: hide money, avoid taxes, and dodge accountability. He used anonymous trusts to hold assets without ever linking them directly to himself. Nominee directors, people paid to act as fake managers, signed paperwork so his name wouldn't appear on key documents. Funds moved through banks in multiple countries, making it nearly impossible for investigators to follow the trail. Millions passed quietly through accounts and vanished into properties, investments, and more shell companies. The network was airtight and built to disappear under scrutiny. Authorities in multiple countries tried to trace the money but hit walls. Requests for cooperation were denied or delayed. The paperwork looked legal, but only because it was designed that way. Every loophole in international finance had been exploited to the fullest. This wasn't business, it was financial camouflage. Rautenbach lived in luxury, but legally he appeared nearly invisible. His official records showed modest holdings, while the real fortune sat offshore, untouchable. He wasn't just avoiding taxes, he was evading consequences. This was how billionaires disappear in plain sight. In 2008, Zimbabwe faced one of the bloodiest elections in its history. Opposition members were beaten, tortured, and in some cases killed. Human rights groups accused state forces of carrying out a coordinated campaign of violence. But in the background, trucks with no logos moved quietly through the night, carrying supplies, fuel, and possibly These trucks were traced back to a logistics company owned by Billy Rautenbach. Reports from local witnesses claimed they saw his vehicles delivering crates to known ZANU-PF strongholds. These weren't just goods or campaign materials. Some suspected they were weapons. A leaked intelligence memo alleged that the military received covert support from private contractors. One of the names that appeared repeatedly in those documents was Rautenbach. His company, once known for moving goods, had allegedly become a silent arm of political control. Testimonies from former insiders painted a darker picture. One whistleblower, speaking under protection, claimed that drivers were instructed never to ask what they were transporting. They were told to follow orders, no questions asked, and to avoid police routes. Some shipments went directly to militia camps in rural areas just before Election Day. It wasn't just logistics. It looked like preparation. Financial records added more layers to the suspicion. Between March and July of 2008, large sums of money flowed from companies linked to Rautenbach to accounts connected to government operatives. These payments had no clear business explanation. Investigators found patterns showing coordinated cash movements around key violent states. The money trail, while hidden behind offshore structures, suggested intentional support for election interference. Many asked, why would a businessman get involved in violence? The answer may be found in what he gained after the elections. Shortly after Mugabe was declared winner, Rautenbach received access to mining contracts and government-backed fuel projects. These weren't small deals. They were worth hundreds of millions. It seemed that funding repression came with a massive reward. International bodies tried to act, but every move hit a wall. Witnesses vanished, documents disappeared, and local prosecutors refused to investigate. He remained untouchable in Zimbabwe, moving freely while his victims were silenced. The fear surrounding his name grew. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about power. Despite growing evidence, no court has ever convicted him for these alleged acts. The lack of justice has haunted families who lost loved ones during the election chaos. Some believe the truth is buried too deep. But for those who saw his trucks, handled his payments, or heard his name whispered in fear, the story is far from over. It's a chapter that still bleeds. Billy Rautenbach never spoke publicly about these claims. His silence speaks volumes in a country where words can kill. Those who dared to question him often lost everything. He built his empire on control of roads, money, and fear, and in 2008, it looked like that control turned deadly. Over the years, prosecutors in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and even Europe tried to bring Billy Rautenbach to court. Each time, the case seemed strong, evidence collected, witnesses ready, charges prepared, but then something strange would happen. A key file would vanish, a witness would suddenly refuse to testify, or the charges would quietly disappear. Every time justice came close, it slipped away. His safety didn't come from luck. It came from power. He had friends in high places, including top officials in Zimbabwe's ruling party. These weren't casual connections. They were political allies who depended on his money and influence. Some had received campaign donations, while others benefited from lucrative business partnerships. Protecting Rautenbach also meant protecting their own futures. There were also whispers of darker methods. Several journalists who investigated him received threats. One was forced into hiding after publishing a report on his ties to violent regimes. Others saw their work censored or mysteriously taken offline. The message was clear: dig too deep and you'll be silenced. Financial records pointed to quiet payments made to judges, police, and intelligence officers. These payments weren't labeled as bribes, but their timing told a different story. In some cases, they matched the exact moments when charges against him were dropped. The trail was always covered, but patterns emerged for those who looked closely. It was a system built to protect him. Even outside Zimbabwe, he remained untouched. Countries like the UK and the DRC opened investigations, but none led to court. Some believed his lawyers delayed proceedings until the cases expired. Others believed more serious tactics were used: threats, blackmail, or well-timed donations. No one could prove it, but many suspected it. Rautenbach's empire thrived while his victims were ignored. People who lost land to his fuel projects or suffered during the election violence never got answers. They watched him grow richer and stronger while they were left behind. The gap between his life and theirs kept growing. Justice seemed like a word they were never meant to hear again. And through it all, Rautenbach stayed silent. He gave no interviews, made no public statements, and avoided courtrooms. His name was often whispered, rarely spoken aloud. For many, he became a ghost, seen everywhere, yet unreachable. A man shielded not just by money, but by fear. Then, in October 2021, the Pandora Papers cracked open a bombshell. Billy had funneled $30 million into offshore trusts in the Cook Islands and Singapore, all for Jenny Lin, even as sanctions choked him years earlier. He'd started shifting assets in 2008, routing cash through a Mauritius shell company called Sabat, a sneaky move to dodge prying eyes. Those trusts promised his kids a cushy future, with stakes in coal mines and ethanol still trickling in. It was a slick escape hatch. While the world thought he was cornered, he'd been rigging a soft landing. The heat never let up, but Billy kept floating, a ghost who'd built a parachute nobody saw coming. Here's where it gets juicier. Billy didn't just sit on ethanol. He started grabbing coal in western Zimbabwe. With projects like the Hwang power plant needing fuel, demand spiked, and he swooped in, using old ZANU-PF ties to lock down mining rights. By 2023, whispers said he was pulling strings behind the scenes, keeping his name off the books, but his hands in the cash. No one's pinned him down. Jail's a no-show, and hasn't knocked. Today, in 2025, he's 65, still breathing, although a shadow from a crazy past. Billy's end is different from that of other criminals. While he didn't serve any jail term or get sent to an early grave, his reputation has been damaged over the years, and he has been banned from multiple countries, including South Africa, one of the countries that made him stinkingly rich. After being charged with 326 counts of fraud in 2009 by the NPA while hiding in Zimbabwe, he was forced to pay a fine of 40 million rands for the charges to be withdrawn. Compared to the FTE of other infamous South African criminals, this was a slap on the wrist. Some reckon his buddies in ZANU-PF are his shield, keeping the law at bay like loyal guard dogs. The Pandora stash hints he's planned for the long haul, setting up his family while he fades from the spotlight. His coal moves show he's not retired, just quieter, sneakier, maybe waiting for the next big play. It's a puzzle with no last piece. Did he beat the system, or is the system still playing him? Billy built fortune-bending rules, ran from the law across countries, and faced the music only to dance away. The suspense isn't in a big fall. It's in how he's still out there, a ghost who won't stay buried. South Africa called him their biggest fraudster, but maybe he's their craftiest survivor. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.